How you doing? I'm Kevin O'Hara for alcoholmastery.com. This is the Alcohol Mastery Podcast, session 17. So I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping first before we start off. On Tuesday, launched the Habits Unplugged Alcohol Mastery Mastermind coaching group. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll leave the link down below. It's basically a lot of different things to try and get people together. There's group coaching within a forum. There's a lot of new videos every single day, weekly Q&As, that kind of thing. So if you haven't checked it out already, I'll leave a link down below. So we'll get on to the first question. It comes from Jeff Groves. It says, Kevin and friends, if you want to see firsthand the hypocrisy prevalent in our media, watch any episode of the third seasons of Narcos on Netflix. The entire series is about the good guys bringing down the bad guy drug dealers of Colombia, and yet every single episode I've seen is clearly sponsored by the alcohol industry. Placement after placement of maniacal brainwashing good guys and bad guys alike, consuming gallons of a drug. The irony, as Kevin would say, let's stop being sheep, fodder of the alcohol industry. Let's see it for what it is. And you know what? You're right. I mean, it's one of the programs that I love watching. Narcos has just got this tinge to it, and sometimes I find myself being on side of the drug dealers. I mean, I think it's a natural thing sometimes to be on the side of the baddie, but when you take a big company like Anheuser-Busch, for instance, right? They're one of the biggest beer companies in the world, and talking about Colombian drug lords, the board of this group, there's 3 or 4 guys on there that are multi-billionaires that come from Colombia. So what is the difference between the two people? You know, and you can say, well, one is illegal and one is not. That's fair enough. But ask yourself, why are they illegal? You know, and people come out and say, well, you know, they're illegal because one causes a lot of deaths and the other one doesn't. Well, you know, alcohol causes 3.5 million deaths per year. Cigarettes cause 5 million deaths per year, and that number is rising as the alcohol and cigarette companies are pushing their advertising and marketing to new levels in different countries, especially cigarette companies, you know, where there's not the same amount of what would you say, the guards against the advertising. I can't think of the word now at the moment. Regulations. Why couldn't I think of that? But you know, where the cigarette industry isn't as heavily regulated, there's huge advertising, you know, and you get countries, poor countries, where there's children, you know, under 10 who are hooked for life on cigarettes, who are getting all sorts of diseases, you know, from smoking cigarettes because of their young lungs and stuff, you know. So when you take all the other drugs put together, the illegal drugs, you look at it and you think there's 250,000 per year deaths, and a lot of those are due to the illegality of the drug, you know, so drug wars between people. A lot of it's due to the uncleanliness of the drugs. So there's, you know, when you get a heroin addict who takes a drug which has been adulterated with something shite in the drug, you know. Another problem with that is that a lot of overdoses are caused by this kind of thing, where you know, the drugs are cut so much, and the drug users know that the drug is cut, so they know a certain amount to take, and then they get a pure version of the stuff and they take too much at once, and it causes them to obviously go into withdrawal. So yeah, it's a topsy-turvy world we live in. You know, the richest countries and the richest companies in the world And the ones who are spending the most money on marketing and advertising are all marketing and advertising foods, beverages, things that are causing a lot of problems to the human being, you know. I mean, you look at companies like the cigarette manufacturers and look at the spread of their investments, and it's all in addictive nature foods and products and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, it's just one of those things that we have to live with. Nothing we can do about it. The only thing that you can do about it is yourself and what you do from a day-to-day thing, and how you think about things, and opening your own eyes and educating yourself. And it's only when you start looking for these things that you do see them, like that in Narcos. I mean, bird. I haven't seen many programs that don't have that kind of product placement, you know, especially when I see alcohol everywhere now, you know, and you see it a lot more once you become aware of it. Next one is from Dulu Woohoo. First time in years I went 2 days without a drink. Major accomplishment, thank you. Still working on totally quitting, but I know I can't do it in one shot anymore. I have accepted that step by step. Thanks for your inspiration and insightful videos. Well, most people are a work in progress. I think once you understand that you've got a problem, you know, once you understand that alcohol is a problem in general, there's really no going back from that. I mean, it's sort of it puts you onto you know, once you have the knowledge, you can't unknowledge yourself. You know, you can try and hide around it and obfuscate and try and skirt around some of the issues, but at the end of the day, you always know that the alcohol is bad for you. You understand that, you know. Most of the time, people get to that stage when they're having problems, they're getting pains from it, they're suffering in some part of their lives because of their drinking, and you know, it's just it's a process. So it's another one of those things where, you know, if somebody tries to quit drinking and fails, they look at themselves like it's a personal failure, and you know, it's not. I mean, the propaganda runs deep, right? The habit runs deep, and you've got to fight this on many levels and many different fronts, you know. When I stopped, I had a huge reason to stop, you know. It was like a kick in the teeth for me, you know. It was something that just happened overnight, but it was something that, it was a process. I was leading myself up to it. I was thinking about it a lot. I was thinking about the hangovers and how the hangovers were getting worse, you know. I was thinking about waking up in the middle of the night and feeling like I was going to have a heart attack. I was thinking about my health, you know. And when you start to get older, you get into your 40s, your mid-40s and stuff, you do start to think about these things, you know, as a natural part of getting older, you know. So yeah, when I stopped, it was decisive, and I was able to push myself through it. And most people are capable of doing that, you know, but you've got to sort of set up the conditions. You've got to give yourself the best possible chance of doing this, right? One of the best ways of doing that is just to prepare yourself first to, you know, cut down on alcohol, to think about things, think about your own alcohol consumption, what the triggers are, you know, what's causing you to do this, where you are, who you're with, all these kind of things. Think about these things in advance, and that'll give you a much better chance of continuing on and being successful in it. And if you're not successful, don't be beating yourself up about it, because, you know, if you get 2 days into it, that's 2 days that you've gone without alcohol. If you're a week into it, if you're 2 weeks, 5 weeks, It's 5 weeks that you've given your body a break. You know, for whatever reason you fell off the wagon, it doesn't matter. You know, you have to learn by that experience and get back on and continue and try and build your own self-confidence and build your own self-belief that you can do it. And if you approach it like that, then eventually you're going to be able to do it, you know. I mean, you know, obviously, best case scenario is you stop and that's it. You deal with things and you gradually and slowly, step by step, move yourself into your new life, and you deal with every day as it comes up. You deal with things on a problem by problem basis, you know. You deal with the urges on an urge by urge basis. The cravings, same thing. The sleepless nights, same thing. The worst thing you can do is to start judging yourself and judging your abilities and saying to yourself, well, I can't really do this, you know, because it's only going to set you back in the long run, you know. So don't do that to yourself. Flies are out already. So the next question is, I have second day of no alcohol. I have headaches, chills, slight fever and body aches. A lot of the time that's just natural. I mean, don't forget that, you know, your body is dealing with this thing on a day-to-day basis. Every time, I call it cyclical recovery. So it's, you put the alcohol in, your body recognizes it as a neurotoxin and immediately tries to fight off the effects. Same thing happens with coffee. Coffee is another neurotoxin, fights off the effects. Your body wants to expel it as quickly as possible. So it gathers together all its forces to try and push it out, right? And this is a constant battle, right? So you put the alcohol in, your body pushes it out as quickly as possible. You put more alcohol in, and while your body is dealing with this, it has to shut off other sometimes essential. I mean, everything that goes on in your body is essential to one degree or another. So while your body is dealing with the alcohol that you're putting into it, it has to close off the these other essential functions, you know. I mean, your liver, while it's dealing with alcohol, cannot deal with the other things that it's supposed to be doing, and your liver is responsible for a lot of different functionality within your body, right? Different essential functionality. So when you stop drinking, your body sort of goes into overdrive, trying to repair some of the damage and to recuperate. And a lot of the time, the energy that takes up is not left for other things, you know. You know, you could be dehydrated, you know. So many people, once they stop drinking, they tend to go on to other things, you know, go on to soft drinks, for instance, that are got a lot of caffeine and sugar in them. And that's going to dehydrate you. That's going to cause you a lot of problems as well, you know. So you have to look at all the different areas. I mean, I say that the best way to do this is to try and give your body the tools that it needs to quit, right? So you feed yourself a good diet. Feed yourself a lot of fruits and vegetables, high water content fruits and vegetables like oranges and mangoes and pineapples. Give yourself a lot of water, give yourself a lot of good carbohydrates. Try and avoid processed foods as much as you can, you know. And at the same time, you need a lot of rest, right? You know, don't be quitting drinking it and then thinking, well, you know, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to change my life. I did that at the beginning. I tried to do so many different things and I just burnt myself out. So your body needs rest. I mean, your body has only got a certain amount of energy available to it at one particular time, and if it's using that energy for reparations, which are essential in your body, then it cannot give you that energy for jumping around. And you know, it's the same thing if your body's only got a certain amount of energy for the reparations. Then if you're putting junk food into your body, right, you're not giving the fuel that is necessary to replenish that energy. So it's a balancing act in the beginning, and it can be tough, but at the end of the day, just continue on, try and if there was one thing I'd tell you to change, would be to hydrate yourself properly. Give yourself a lot of water. Drink at least 3 litres of water, whatever that is, in 3 or 4 litres of water in the beginning, just to give your body this necessary hydration. Because if you're stopping coming off, especially beer and stuff like that, you are getting water with that, and if you stop, a lot of that water is being, you have to replace it, and don't replace it with sugary drinks. So next one, you refer to the bad habit of alcoholism as opposed to it being referred to as a disease. I've been determined to break the habit of drinking alcohol, just as I broke the habit of smoking many years ago. Nevertheless, 12-step programs follow the disease model, as do most treatment centres. Shakespeare wrote something to the effect of, "A word being only a word." Is that the case? This was an email I got. So, and I sent the response out saying, he also said that a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Now, imagine if we started calling a rose a shit or a puke. It might smell just as sweet, but at the end of the day, not many people are going to want to go over and smell it, because of the connotation, right? So, how many people would have their first impressions tainted if that rose was called a shit, right, or a puke? If you start out with the belief that drinking alcohol is a disease, or it's alcoholism, how much more difficult to make it? How much more difficult does that make it for you personally? 12-step programs point out that there is no cure for this disease. No matter how much you try, you cannot ever get rid of it. Looking at this from the perspective of a bad habit, however, puts the control firmly in your court. And that's, it's basically what I'm trying to say all along is, the more you can do to bring the power back to yourself, the better off you're going to be. And the more you give the power away to something else, the worse off you're going to be. So programs like the AA, words like alcoholism, disease, sober, these all keep you tied to the alcohol, to the drinking, to the old behavior, to the old thinking, right? And no matter how much you go forward, if you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm a year sober, I'm 5 years sober," right? What does sober say to you? It doesn't say anything about being new or going on a new journey or starting out fresh. It links you directly back to the alcohol, right? If you say to yourself, "Well, yeah, I'm 5 years away from alcohol, but one drink and I'm still an alcoholic, and I'm going to be an alcoholic for the rest of my life," or "I have a disease called alcohol," which so many people spout on about. I mean, it's just, you hear so many people talking about it and saying, "Yeah, I'm an alcoholic and I'll always be an alcoholic, and it's a daily fight for me, 5-10 years afterwards, And it's like they've got a badge of honor, right? That's, for themselves. They're walking around with this pride thing that they are succeeding in overcoming this habit daily. Whereas on the opposite end of the scale, if you say to yourself, "No, alcohol was a habit. It was something that I did. It was something that I did for a long time, and it was a part of a behavior cycle that I went through. But I decided to quit on the 1st of January or the 25th of June or the 6th of August, whatever it was. That was the date I stopped. And I've been changing my life ever since, and I've been moving away, onwards and upwards, away from alcohol, right, ever since. It's been a testing time at times. It's been a time when I've thought about having a drink because, this is the way I used to deal with problems. This is the way I used to cope with life. But now I don't do that anymore. So this is what I do now, Instead of drinking to relax, I meditate, or I go out walking, or I do countless thousands of other things that I could be doing that are much more healthy for me. in the long run, and I'm much more healthy for my family who are watching me, right, and taking their cue off what I do, it's a much more healthy way of looking at things. It's a much more beneficial way for you. That's what I'm all about, is trying to find the easiest path away from alcohol so that you never have to go back to that type of thinking. I mean, the thinking is there because it was brainwashed into you. And most people drink because they're sheep. Basically, they're being led around by their parents, by their friends, by their peers, by the manufacturing, alcohol manufacturers, by the market and all that kind of stuff. Everyone's being led around like sheep, just my parents did it, so I'm doing it. My friends are doing it, so I'm going to do it, And it's that kind of mentality, not thinking about things, that is a huge problem. And not just in alcohol, by the way, in many areas of your life, but because we do it in one area, it tends to leak over into other areas of our lives, And, I've seen people, my life was a mess, In my mind, I've seen people whose lives were a mess. My life was a mess. And it's that basic questioning things, questioning the validity of, that sounded drunk, validity, questioning how valid something is, right? A statement or a way of thinking, a thought that comes up in my own head. Questioning how is that going to benefit me or is it not going to benefit me, right? These are all things that I think most of us do anyway, to a certain level, but we do it. We do it to an extent that with some things we do it with and other things we don't do it with, So keep it as simple as that. It's not anything more complicated than that. But at the end of the day, it's sitting down and or just thinking about things and trying to isolate the areas which are causing you problems and trying to deal with those one thing at a time. That's the only way you can do it. It's the best way of doing it, really. Next question comes from, where are we? Email question. Here's my question. How long will it take before the self-image changes to match the actual behavior? Do you know how obese people who lose weight still see themselves as obese? Is this the same thing for drinkers? I've not brought the alcohol to my lips for 18 days. I never have done this before. When I started, I couldn't imagine 24 hours. Now I am 18 days in. My best friend asked me if I will ever become a social drinker. I told her that I only knew that I didn't want to drink now, and when we go on vacation next weekend to the Dominican Republic, if there is anything left after the terrible hurricanes, well, please God, or please whoever, I was not going to drink. When she asked me about becoming a social drinker, I faltered because it's so hard to imagine myself as a non-drinker for the rest of my life. Drinking has defined me, unfortunately, for decades. When I stopped smoking, it took years before I realized one day that I did not see myself as a smoker. How long will this take? It feels scary. Well, I think everyone can see that point, can relate to that from one level or another. I mean, I can definitely see it. Your self-image is something which is built up over your whole life, really. I mean, you change every 7 years, right? Your body sort of renews itself every 7 years. So after 7 years, there's not one cell, so they say, within your body that is the same cell as it was 7 years ago, right? So, but you take your self-image, how you see yourself, your beliefs, the core values that you hold deeply, you take those from earlier on, and they're developed from earlier on in your life. And it was the way I saw myself for a long time. I mean, as you say, as a smoker, I'm 7 years, I think. I've lost count of how many years I haven't smoked now, and I can't remember the day that I quit. And it was one of the things that really tormented me for much of my life. Just trying to quit and not being able to, and just being under the influence of these cravings and this addiction. This really bad habit. And now I see myself, I couldn't imagine myself as a smoker. Sometimes I still smell cigarette smoke and it has a pleasant smell, right? The smoke that comes off a cigarette, the ashtray smell, or the smell you get off a person who's been smoking, is disgusting. I can't stand that smell. It's not nice at all. But that smell off a cigarette is still in my brain somewhere. It's related to something which is good. I mean, me taking up a cigarette and smoking it, there's no chance. I have the same thing with alcohol. Although I don't like the smell, I don't like anything about alcohol. I can't think of any aspect. Maybe the colour of wine as it sits in a glass. The look of a pint of Guinness looks good to me. It doesn't look a bad thing. But the smell of it is disgusting. The smell of it coming off somebody's mouth, even worse. So I'm completely over that. I would never put the stuff into my body, because in order for it to go into my mouth, it's got to pass my nose first, and I'm not sure if I would vomit. It'd be like, for me, taking a swig out of a vinegar bottle, to drink wine now. But there's certain parts of it, the aesthetics of it, which I still find sort of attractive. So it's not something which is cut and dried, right? You get to a stage where you don't think about it anymore. It just doesn't work like that, It's a very, on a scale of things, and it's diminishing all the time. The more time you put between yourself and any habit, the less effect it's going to have on you. Some things are going to disappear quicker than others. Like I say, with the smell of people and cigarettes and the look of a cigarette packet. I mean, the look of a cigarette, I just look at a cigarette now thinking cancer stick, My mum used to call them coffin nails. As in the coffin and the coffin in the ground. And it was a great analogy. I mean, that sticks with me now. And when I look at them, I don't see anything aesthetically pleasing about a cigarette. But at the same time, like I said, it's the same thing with alcohol. I have no smell relationship, but I still get the aesthetics sometimes from a glass of wine. But I mean, you can make anything look like a pint of Guinness. I've seen people making smoothies that look like Guinness. Blackcurrant juice, put it into a wine glass, it looks like wine, but a lot more healthier for you. So just look at this one again, because it was a fairly long one. So I mean, 18 days into it, you're doing really well, and it is like that. It's the same thing. I couldn't imagine myself going 24 hours. I could, because there was often times, and I'm sure you can as well, the person who's sent in this email, there's times when you just can't drink for one reason or another, and you go 24 hours or you go 48 hours, and you can't have a drink. I mean, I've gone longer than that just because I wanted to prove it to myself, a few days here, a few days there, a week here, a week there. You not only prove to yourself that you can do it, you can stay off it, but you also, once you decide to quit drinking alcohol for good, you have proved it to yourself that you're not going to go through any bad withdrawal symptoms and stuff like that. So how long does it take? Like I say, it's a dynamic process. It's going to take as long as it takes, but the more power you take for yourself, the more you don't give away to other things, to other words, and the easier it's going to be, really, at the end of the day. You're the master of your own destiny. If you take the necessary steps for changing your habit, and you get rid of the habit, right? That's the first thing, as I said, and then everything else is just changing the way you look at things, changing the way you do things, changing the bad habits into good habits, getting rid of bad habits and bringing good habits into your life. And it's all progress. It's just because you get a thought about drinking, or just because you can't see yourself going on holidays, it's a fearful time. I didn't go on my first vacation until 8 months. Was it 8 months, 9 months after I stopped drinking? And that was, for me, the first time I'd gone on my vacation, right? First time I'd gone on holidays without booze. And that was scary, because I've never done that before, since I was a kid. But it's the same thing with birthdays, If you quit in January like I did, my birthday is in June, so it's 6 months before, and then you come to your birthday and it's the first birthday, The first Christmas was 12 months after I'd quit, and that was like freaky, It scares you because you haven't done it before, but you've gone through 12, and it's just another day, You've gone through 12 months of not doing this, and at the end of the day, it's just one of those things. You've got to think about this thing as when you've got to 18 days now, right? And you've gone through 18 iterations of getting up in the morning, going through your day, becoming tired during the day, feeling hungry, losing your willpower. You've got a lot more willpower in the morning than you have in the evening. Coming home and doing what you would normally do and not doing that anymore, right? So not taking out the glass of wine or the beer or the tequila or whatever it is that you drink. And you've gone through 18 iterations of that. So the more you do something, the more it becomes a part of you, right? The more you don't do something, the more it disappears from your habit. And that's the way habits work. Habits work by pure repetition, right? So the more you do it, the more it builds up inside you, and you construct the habit. The more you don't do it, the more it dissipates and you deconstruct it. So just give it time. I mean, that's the only thing you can do, and just keep it in front of your mind that you're not going to drink. Regardless of what happens, no more alcohol is going to touch your lips. You've done really well, so keep it up, right? Next question is from YouTube, aka Immersion Networks. Do you have any thoughts on why a kid who is healthy, sporty, a champion, as in my case, ended up 20 years later drinking, smoking, coffee, meat, TV, internet, etc.? I quit most bad habits except for coffee and smoking, some smoking, but I can't seem to pinpoint how the heck I got into this mess. Well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. How you got into this mess was how you got into it. It's a gradual process, like I've just said. Habits are built up bit by bit. It's built up by repetition. So when you start smoking first, you're not an addict, right? When you start drinking first, you're not an addict, right? When you start taking heroin first, despite what it says in the popular media, you're not an addict. There's people who can take heroin and take it and leave it. They can go onto it and off it as they please. Addiction to that extent is also dependent on your environment. So, if you live in a shitty environment, if you've got a bad life and you're trying to escape things in your life, then it's a lot easier to become addicted to stuff like this, to heroin or to drinking and stuff like that. But, all these habits they're there. They become habits gradually over time, and you don't realize that they're happening. But it doesn't really matter. You are where you are, right? You are where you are right now, and you can't change that. You can't go back and not start the habit. So, I mean, the thing is to take it day by day and to take it habit by habit. A lot of the time, when you get rid of a habit like this, when you get away from alcohol, get away from cigarettes, whatever it is, if you find it tough, and it's a tough thing to do, to go through, then you're building up resilience, you're building up self-confidence, you're building up a lot of different skills. Jesus, I don't know if they're midgets or mosquitoes. I hope they're not muzzies. I feel all itchy now. I get down out of these trees. You're building up resilience. Like I said in one of the last podcasts, when you do this, your brain changes. The parts of your brain that are responsible for your positive expectations and for your confidence and for your staying power, your persistence, all these kind of things, these all build. It's like a muscle, when you use something, you build it, you reinforce it. And it's the same thing with these kind of areas of your brain, So the more you do this, the more you'll find that it becomes easier for the next one on, you know. So one habit leads to another habit, and in the opposite direction also, you know. So if the more you let yourself go and let a bad habit take over you, the easier it is for the next bad habit to come in and take over as well, you know. So you find yourself starting out smoking, for instance, and then you find yourself going into drinking, and then you're eating junk food, and then you're not exercising, and, you know, so on and so forth. So, but I wouldn't take any notice of what's happened in the past. It doesn't matter what the initial cause of this was, you know. I think this is going back to Freudian stuff, you know, where you have to go back to your childhood and figure out what your mummy issues were and your daddy issues and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to do that. You need to sort of say, well, this is where I am now. This is the problem that I've got. In your case, smoking. But it could be drinking, it could be anything, right? And say to yourself, well, where do I go from here? You know, this is the position that I'm at. You know, you can't be at any other point in the time scale. You can't be a week in the past, or you can't be a week in the future. You are where you are with what you've got. I mean, one of the things that in the last comment about the lady who was going to the Dominican Republic, she was saying that she can't get over the thinking, you know, and this thinking keeps popping up into her head. You start out this journey as a drinker. You start out in the place where you are, and it's very difficult to be anywhere else except here. So this process of going from a drinker to a non-drinker, to from a smoker to a non-smoker, to from a person who doesn't exercise to somebody who loves exercise, right? Takes time, it takes energy, it takes building. I mean, if it didn't, there would be no need for these videos, right? Because none of us, there would be no need for no such thing as habits and bad habits and addictions and all that kind of stuff. People would just get over them. They'd go, yeah, I want to get over this now, and boom, you're done. But there would also be no habitual behavior in any other parts of our lives, you know? I mean, everything that you do requires this form of habit building, right? Talking, walking, running, whatever job you're in, you know, whatever language you speak, whatever you do in your life, there's an habitual nature to it, right? There's something that there's a learning patterns associated with it, that you start out not knowing something, and you gradually go up the scale until you're at whichever level you're at, you know, and then you can either carry on going up, or you can switch to something else and learn something else. Same thing with habits, you know, same thing with getting rid of habits, you know. You start out with this high level of habitual nature, and you gradually have to chip away at it day by day by day and work at it until the habit disappears. You know, and sometimes the habit's going to disappear for certain parts of the day. So, you know, you might go through 7-8 hours of the day without thinking about it, and then it'll come back in the evenings. And then eventually you'll go where you might not think about it for 2 or 3 days, you know, and then you'll think about it, you know, when you're really tired. Or then you might, you know, go for a few weeks, but you'll get a time of really big stress or something in your life, and you'll start thinking about it then. And it goes on and on like that until eventually you have fleeting thoughts about it, and then eventually you just don't have anything. I mean, like I said, my thoughts about alcohol now are disgusting, right? I can look at a pint of Guinness and I can appreciate the pint of Guinness for what it is. That was, for me, was as soon as I saw a pint of Guinness, it was my mouth would start to water, and I would just be thinking about it, and you know, that was it. I'd be drinking, you know. It's probably not as clear cut as that, but you know, there was a process involved. There was triggers, there was all these kind of things. So that was just my process. So move on now to the next one, which is Birdman. My issue is that I always think I don't really have an issue because my problem is milder than most folks who want to do something in recovery. So after a few days, I'm like, I'm not an alcoholic, so what's the big deal? I then go to moderation until I have a big night. I feel like I was down in 8 or 10 drinks a night. It would be easier for me to latch on to reasons why I quit. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the full question there, but it's going back to the moderation thing. You know, a lot of people, they go a few days without alcohol, they get over the initial hangover feeling. I mean, there's like, you come up to this alcohol thing, and there is a motivation for you to quit, to step over that line. Now that motivation might be, you're just feeling crap, or you're feeling crap physically, or you're feeling crap because somebody has said something to you, or you've done something, or whatever reason it is, right? But there's a motivation to go, boom, not drinking anymore. It's like that thing where you get up every morning with a really bad hangover, and you say to yourself, I'm never doing that again. And while you're under the influence of that hangover, you're not going to do it, right? It's like going to the dentist when you've got pain. A lot of people won't go to the dentist. They're afraid of the dentist, and the only reason they'll go to the dentist because they've got a pain in their tooth. But as soon as that pain is gone, they won't go to the dentist then for the treatment that will stop the next pain from coming up, if you understand. And it's the same thing here. People have that motivation to step across the line. They step across the line and they go for 4, 5, 6, 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is, off the alcohol, and they start to feel good about themselves. They feel stronger. The alcohol is not doing the damage anymore, and they forget what it was like to be in that position where they have that motivation to step across that line. And from that point on, once they start thinking about alcohol, maybe I could go back onto it, maybe I can handle it, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing anymore. I'm not an alcoholic after all. This is what the comment said. This is when you start to put the seeds of self-doubt in your mind. And once you start that, it's only a matter of time before you're feeding those seeds. You're putting shit on top of them, and the seeds start to grow and they flower, and eventually you go, yeah, maybe moderation is a good thing. I feel strong now, and I've got a handle on this, and I feel like I can do this. And what's the harm in having 1 or 2 glasses of wine, right? 1 or 2 pints. And you start out with that thought in mind, right? And you go out for your first couple of times, or you buy a bottle of wine and you bring it home and you have a glass, and you only have 1 or 2 glasses, right? You stick within the limit that you've set out for yourself, right? You've prescribed for yourself. And you feel good, and it's a positive reinforcement of your thoughts, right? And then the next time you do the same thing, right? And the next time you might do the same thing. But then the 4th time or the 5th time, you go, sure, I mean, 1 more won't harm, and you go to 3 glasses, right? And then the next time you go, yeah, but I might as well finish off the bottle, and before you know it, you're back to square one again, right? So that's the process. Moderation, as I've said, is something which you've got to do not only now and for this week and next month, but you've got to do this for the rest of your life if you want to have a life of moderation, right? When really the whole purpose of you drinking is to get the buzz, right? And if you're not getting the buzz, then what's the point of doing the drinking, right? Don't tell me it's for the taste, because there are far more better things for you to drink to get the taste. Don't tell me it's for the relaxation, because there are far better ways of relaxing, right? Don't tell me it's to socialize, because nobody needs alcohol to socialize. It's the socializing itself which is the reason for doing it. You put yourself into a room in isolation and drink alcohol and see how good you feel about yourself. It's the socialization that is good. It's the relaxation. It's coming home at night and putting your feet up and watching your favorite TV program and just relaxing. That's the relaxation. That's what causes you to relax. But because we associate the alcohol with it, we think it's the alcohol that's causing it. So it's all cause and effect. But I'm going to end it there. My positive email today, if I can find it, is from Cheryl Ford. This is a nice one. I heard you talk about triggers to drink. Well, I found that if you look hard enough, I can see triggers to not drink. I was on my way to the liquor store, and a neon sign 100 feet from the door said, "You are stronger than you think." I've seen inspirations everywhere since. I've seen inspirations everywhere since. I'll always be grateful to you. Great positive note to end it. I mean, I talk about this all the time, that you have to look for your triggers, look for the triggers that are causing you to do this, and I forget to say also at the same time that there are, with any habit that you do in your life, there are triggers to do it, and there are positive influences out there. You just have to look for them. But you start to see these things everywhere when you don't drink. Once you get it into your mind that you get rid of the propaganda that alcohol is good for you, and you start to think about it from the perspective that it is all propaganda. Alcohol is never going to be good for you. It's never going to give you health benefits. That you can, any health benefits that they claim you can get from drinking a glass of wine 2 or 3 times a week, right? You get the same benefits from just going out and having a walk, right? You get the same benefits from doing so many different things. So why would you poison yourself in order to get a benefit? And much of the benefits that you get from alcohol, from the perspective of cardiovascular benefits, are because we've got a bad lifestyle in the first place. I mean, if you're eating a lot of crap and you're furring up your arteries and stuff, then it needs sometimes something like this, like a solvent, to get into your system and to break down some of these things, right? So the cure is not to put the shit into your body in the first place, right? But going back to the positive note for the end of this podcast, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see the positive signs everywhere, and no matter where you see the sign, don't take it for what it is. Don't be reading bad things into stuff that you don't need to. I mean, read positive things out of as many things as you can. A lot of the times when you see alcohol advertising, even you can take the positive thing out of it. You can look at the alcohol advertising and say to yourself, well, yeah, I know that what it is now. I can see you for what you are. It's like the Wizard of Oz, in the old version of the Wizard of Oz, when the dog Toto went over and grabbed a hold of the curtain and pulled back the curtain, and all of a sudden this giant projection on the wall was revealed for what it was. It was a little old man pulling switches who said he wasn't a bad person, he was just a really bad wizard. So I'll leave it there for today. If you've got any questions at all, then leave a comment down below. You can send me an email at kevin@alcoholmastery.com. If you haven't signed up for the Alcohol Mastery starter pack yet, then go over to alcoholmastery.com and you'll see the starter pack on the first page there. Just put your name and email address, and there's a lot of different stuff in there to help you to get over the propaganda, to get over those first few days and weeks, to prepare your mind for what's to come, the habit deconstruction that's to come. There's also the mastermind coaching group. If you want information about that, then go over to the website as well. On any of the blog posts, you'll see a piece in the sidebar there. So until next time, take care of yourself. Keep the alcohol out your mouth. Onwards and upwards. Take care. Bye bye now.